Hey folks, back again. I want to cover a couple of things just quickly. Uh, Firstly, it looks like I called correctly the next phase. They're making a big deal about sovereign citizens and trying to put us in the same basket as the bloody trains. Okay, well that's the tack you're going to take. Go for it. Crazy, but yeah, they want civil war everywhere. They want civil war everywhere around the globe. That's part of it. It's called the Great Reset. So that means at every level they want to change things to the way they want them, not the way that they've evolved naturally over the course of, well, what, 4,000 years of human civilization? Hmm. So, one thing I predicted a while back, talking with the boys, I'm not going to say which boys, but I said it seems like they're installing laughable leaders around the world. This was in the time of ScoMo, Ardern, Trudeau, Boris Johnson, um, and of course, geriatric Biden, who's looking like the most corrupt president since Honest Abe. Soften my stance on Wilson. It's starting to look like he was just a closeted man who was bribed into doing the most evil things in history. So I might go a little soft on him. Must have been hard being gay in the 20s, and then anywhere really outside of the Weimar Republic. Hmm, funny, funny how things come around. Um, but yeah, they installed laughable leaders. And of course they would, because they want a global government. So they need to make us lose faith in national government and local government and state government so that when shit falls apart, we'll be saying, yes, please save us. Save us with your global currency and your global police force. Make sure that the people who come in to police us after this coming crisis don't speak our language and can't be rationalized or reasoned with. So I fully expect in Australia that will involve Chinese police. Interestingly, the ABC were talking about the secret Chinese police operating in Australia up to 2018, and then suddenly that wasn't a story for them anymore. I wonder why. I really do wonder why. I've predicted in the past that this country's already agreed to some sort of soft surrender to China. They got a billion people to feed, and we're a paltry 22 million or whatever it is. And they're already here owning our ports, buying up our water, destroying the Murray Darling with their cotton farms, and buying the majority of our coal, iron, etc. So it makes sense. And then there's the Antarctic Treaty going to be redrawn in the coming decade. And China want a piece of that. And Australia and New Zealand are the obvious jumping off points for that. Uh, I'm not too sure about Ardern's replacement, other than he was her COVID czar and shown himself already to be an authoritarian prick. Um, Albo's still a joke. I'm wondering what's going to happen there. Is Penny Wong going to be prime minister? Maybe she's a bit more of a serious person. But as Cossacks pointed out, her last trip to China has some very big red flags over it regarding her not taking her phone. Now, people might try and argue that's a security risk, but that wouldn't necessitate leaving the phone behind, but rather taking a clean phone without any sensitive data on it and using it carefully. Her not having a phone at all is very suspect. She could have easily kept it in a Faraday bag or something like that if she was worried about it being used to spy on her. So I suspect her ties to China might go a little deeper than it appears. Uh, it is pretty clear that the standover tactics of police are starting to come undone. People are starting to realize a lot of it is a confidence game, and that police speak legalese. The most obvious being when an officer says to you, "Do you understand?" They're not asking if you comprehend, they're asking if you agree to stand under their legal authority. So don't ever say that you understand when dealing with a policeman, or a police officer, I should be clear. A policeman is something we don't have in this country anymore. They're no longer a thing. We have police officers, which is a clue as to the nature of policing in Australia in 2022. I don't want to be lumped in with these sovereign citizen clowns that are being made fun of, although I do sympathise with people sort of trying to come out from under this oppression. And gosh, lots of things happening. Lots of things happening. We're starting to see these fake leaders, or these laughable leaders. They're not fake, except that they're not leaders. It's pretty clear that they have higher ups, and that the democratic process, as revealed by the study that I'm sure you're all familiar with, proving that the lobby groups in almost every Western nation dictate the policy and the will of the people, doesn't really come into the question. So, to have this great reset go forward as they state clearly, I can't believe that the general public in this country is so uninformed when our nominal head of state, King Chuck the Cuck, inaugurated the Great Reset at a speech a year or two ago. I mean, do we have to Clockwork Orange you motherfuckers and put you down in front of a few YouTube videos from the World Economic Forum's own channel before you sort of see what's happening here? They need to destroy our currency, which they're doing rapidly. Inflation's a motherfucker in this joint, huh? The value of a dollar has nearly halved since the beginning of COVID, which is reflected in the price of eggs. Speaking of eggs, roosters are getting expensive. Better get in quick. Again, the rooster's not getting expensive. Your dollar's turning into rubbish. What else? It looks like even Joe Biden's on the way out. Trudeau's numbers are falling within his own party. No idea who his replacement will be. But Biden's most trusted ally in politics, a man whose name slips my mind right now, but was colloquially known as the Prime Minister. He's been by Biden's side since at least 1991, and is said to run things in Washington while Biden's in the White House. He's resigned to step away from the oncoming scandal that is Hunter and Joe and Jim, I suspect, who's a character who manages to stay out of the limelight. But Joe Biden's brother Jim is basically his equivalent of, what's his name? Dick Cheney to W. Jim Biden is to Joe Biden what Dick Cheney was to George W. Bush. He's doing the reconstruction in Ukraine in agreement with the World Economic Forum. They're trying to form a super state with Eastern Ukraine and Poland. Obvious where their civil war is going to come from. Poland and Ukraine have not been on good terms for 3 centuries. So once the things settle on the Eastern Front, there'll be a readily lit fire there to get them their civil war. And in Australia, it seems like it's going to be, they're trying to make it so that the sovereign citizens and the Freedom Caucus, as I like to call us, and the anti-war movement, which is how I got into this. I was in the anti-war movement in 2000. protesting the war in Iraq. Even before that, and I did my first little tangle with the WEF, which at the time was called the WTO, at the then famous S11 protests in Melbourne, where me and a few friends from high school participated, met Bob Brown on the picket lines, and I tangled with riot cops when we surrounded a bus full of delegates for that conference. Shout out to my old friends if you're watching. Be nice to hear from you sometime. So yeah, I've been in this fight for a long time. I've been aware of what's coming for a long time. They make it plain. I think James Lindsay's really onto something when he points out that they're into some kind of twisted, dark hermeticism. But they're also big on contracts. Really big on contracts. And so for their version of the magic, for want of a better term, to not screw with their karma, they literally have to tell you how they're going to fuck you so that they can call it consent. And saying, well, we told them what was coming. They weren't smart enough to do anything about it. That's kind of a tacit agreement, isn't it? Well, no, it's not. No, it's not. You go to great efforts to let us know what's happening and then ride us into the ground if we try and do anything to prepare ourselves for what you've promised will arrive. Thankfully, it's very Game of Thrones. It's not just the dark hermeticists. If you don't believe me about the dark hermeticists, listen to James Lindsay and look into the history of the Lucis Trust, which is an esoteric book publishing company of all things, headquartered in the United Nations. They're active at the WEF. They handle the meditation and group prayer at the WEF conference in Davos. And I think that's where their taste for young flesh comes from. Take that however you will. But things are definitely heating up. And, we have to be careful in the Freedom Caucus that we don't stick our necks out in the wrong way at the wrong time and be labeled and targeted, which is why I'm a little concerned with the Cossacks' recent comments. Many people in the Freedom Caucus do think Putin's on the right side of this one, and I do too, but I wouldn't exactly say that the Freedom Caucus is pro-Russian in the sense that Simeon might let on. We are not enemies of the Australian people in any way or anything like that. We're just enemies of tyranny. We're tired of being stolen from in so many ways. We're overtaxed, we're overregulated. The things that they're trying to push on our children, everything. It's becoming, as we were warned prior to the 2008 market crash, the economy, the dollar, the monetary system itself is becoming a Ponzi scheme. Money runs on confidence anyway. It's like chaos magic in that regard. All it requires to give fiat currency value is belief. But people are running out of that belief just in time for CBDC to come along. So don't be mistaken. It's not an accident. And the only thing that's destroyed the value of the Australian dollar really is government policy, whether it's allowing the RBA to devalue it through its excessive printing of money, the adoption of harsh measures and destroying the economy over COVID, which many people who understand basic economics spoke out about at the time, including myself. We cannot afford any of this. Yeah, it's getting to crunch time. There's so many facets to this, from the way they've changed how policing is done, how recruits are selected, how they're sequestered, how it's made sure they don't have any life experience, and they don't police the communities they come from, so they don't know anyone. That anonymity means it's even less likely that you're going to go and be in contact with them. And as usual, they use you'd be able to reason with them, I should say. As usual, and another thing they've done is put the body cams on, which they're using an edge case scenario, because it's very rarely going to protect the general public to have these cams on them. It's in fact probably, as I see it, more likely to get serious criminals out of trouble when it catches police acting improperly while in the course of their duty. Guys who probably should go down anyway. But for the average citizen, which is most of their interactions, it's a net negative. You can't reason with the guy because his superiors are watching. He doesn't want to seem soft. He doesn't want them to have something to point to when he doesn't make his quota, etc. And, they're young and dumb now in ways they've never been before. Now, when my grandfather became a policeman, they literally had a height and weight requirement for the entry. That's what it was. It wasn't an intelligence test. It wasn't knowledge of the law. It was like, are you big and burly enough to do the job? You're in. As long as you didn't have a criminal record. And I think things improved from there for a long time, but what's happened over the course of the last 8 to 10 years is a degradation in the quality of policing. And the laws have become even more complex. And, as Kevin Mitnick, the famous hacker who wrote The Art of Deception, begins the book with the great quote, I use it often, complexity is deception. They're robbing Peter to pay Paul all the time, taking a cut out at the same time, but they just obfuscate that fact by many steps. Government is just theft with extra steps. That's me. You can quote that. So that's what's on my mind. If you want proof of my main point, just look at what's happened since Boris over there. They had Liz Truss, who was so disposable, all she did was call off peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, and then she was done. And I think Rishi Sunak is just as disposable, and once CBDC comes in the UK, you'll see him turfed as well. So, just see how it bears out. Don't ask me how I make these predictions. I can't tell you. It's just a general sense. I couldn't teach anyone to do what I do. It just comes to me. I just see things and see the pattern in the noise. Take the trend to the end. In that sense, I am an extremist. I'm a trends extremist. Yeah. Well, that's about it, I think. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Like, share, subscribe. Comments in the comments section. I've figured out how to get around how they're hiding the comments from me on the back end. You just got to dig a little deeper. It'll say 0 comments on the first page, and you dig a little deeper. There it is. So make a comment. I will get back to you. I am interested in engaging with my audience. It's just a discussion. I don't want to sound like I'm pontificating all the time. I tend to. I know I tend to. That's fine. Anyway, I'll call it there. Black Guy out. Peace, love, and Kung Fu, everybody. I'm also on Rumble. See you soon.